Before we go on to Pete Veilleux, so I don't know if you remember when your dad or mom used to warm up the car before they started driving. Mine certainly did. But I learned recently that if your car is idling for more than 30 seconds, it's better to turn the car off and turn it back on again than to leave it running. So you can save gas, save money, and spare the air by turning off your car's engine if you'll be idling for more than 30 seconds. You'll be protecting your and your family's health and saving money on gas. As car exhaust is the number one source of air pollution in the Bay Area, you'll be helping to keep our skies blue. So if you are waiting to pick up someone from school, sports practice, or the library, if you're sitting at a drive-through or a car wash, just turn your engine off. You can learn more at idlefreebayarea.org. So we'll be going now to Pete Veilleux at East Bay Wilds. Pete is a dear friend of mine. He's a native plant garden designer and installer. He is the owner of East Bay Wilds. If you go to find a designer on the tour's website, you'll find Pete's contact information and also a portfolio of the gardens he has designed and installed. In addition to designing and installing gardens, Pete also owns the East Bay Wilds Native Plant Nursery in Oakland. If you've been there, you might see a scene like this. Pete carries a wide variety of garden art, in addition to hundreds of species of native plants, many of them hard to find. And Pete specializes in Manzanitas. I want to say before we go to Pete at East Bay Wilds that Pete has had an unfortunate loss. And yesterday, somehow he has lost all of his checks and the cash from his plant sale yesterday as part of the native plant extravaganza. So if you shopped at East Bay Wilds yesterday and wrote Pete a check, if you could get hold of Pete through East Bay Wilds or get hold of me and see if we could help him square away the missing checks at the very least. So let's go to Pete now. And hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
Through it. Yeah, it was all the receipts from yesterday and the day before. Also Friday. Also, all the checks are gone. Yeah. So anyway, moving on.
All right. So if you did shop at Pete's on Friday or Saturday, if you would get hold of Pete or me and rewrite out a second check, and he will, if they ever turn up, cancel the first check, but that would be very helpful. I'm going to mute myself, right. Pete, now, and I'm going to.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. And so we're going to jump in. I also had to recreate this slideshow this morning. It somehow, the last one that we did, I replaced the second part with the first part. So I had to redo this. So it's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a little bit of repetition. So I just wanted to say a little bit about East Bay Wilds also. We're design, install, and maintain firm. And we are located in East Oakland in the Fruitvale district. And my nursery is open every Friday from 9:30 to 4. And you see there's lots of interesting container plants too. They're also, most of them are for sale. The Manzanita on the right in that big pot is a big Sir Manzanita, and it's been in a pot for a very long time, and that's one that I'm keeping for myself. So anyway, and we do a lot of design and install stuff. So here's different gardens that we've done. This is my very first one in Oakland. Here's one of my more recent ones up the road. So I'm going to start off with what to look for in a Manzanita. And here's just a few things that I always look for. And I spend most weekends away exploring different parts of California. And California has Manzanitas throughout the whole state. In the whole world, there's like, I think, something like 67 or something, or no, 75 different Manzanitas, and 65 of those or something like that are from California, or only from California. So this is definitely their cradle of evolution here in California. And they're just, I've been fascinated with them since I moved to California. So things to consider. The most important one, I would say, is the ultimate size, because Manzanitas some of them get very, very large, and some of them do not like to be pruned that much. So you have to be careful and choose the right one for the spot. But in general, most Manzanitas do grow into their space really nicely. So the ultimate size can be huge. Here's one that's 36 feet tall with the trunk 6 feet around. And I found this one on Cedar Mountain many, many years ago. And they did a big show, a big piece on it in the Chronicle, which is kind of neat. And they can also be just 1 inch tall. Here's one. This is Hirstiorum, Arctostaphylos hirstiorum, and it's only 1 inch tall. So last week I covered mostly small Manzanitas and the ground cover ones. So I'm going to cover some of those a little bit more because I didn't say quite enough about them. This Manzanita here, this is an auriculata, or the Mount Diablo Manzanita, one of our local endangered species around here. And this particular one is the Stony Point, which has these little teeny weeny little leaves on them that turn these nice colors when the leaves come out, and it has a very different texture to it. So when I say leaf size, color, size, structure, and pattern, this really shows that this is the type of pattern you get from this one. You don't get the big open tree-like structure, although these can get quite large. But you get this interesting pattern with this one. And you get a lot of different color. These are pájaros here. The one on the left is Paradise. The one on the right is Warren Roberts. And you see the new leaves, when they come out, they get these bronzy colors, these oranges and reds. Warren Roberts is more orange and yellow-ish, the new leaves, whereas the Paradise is more red and deeper red colors. And Paradise also grows larger. Luster Roundtree is another beautiful one, which gets really huge. It can get to 12, 15 feet around. Paradise gets to generally 6 to 8 feet. Warren Roberts more 4 to 6 feet. But then again, Manzanitas grow for their entire lifespan, so they're always growing. So we don't know. You never know what the ultimate size will be. I actually saw a Warren Roberts that was 23 feet tall once, so they can really grow. Leaf color size. Okay, this is the same Manzanita on the left and the right. This is a Glauca, one I love to use in gardens. But when the new leaves come out, they're very bright green like they are on the left. And then once the leaves have been established for a while, then they turn the glaucous colors on the right. And this one with the wet leaves in the rain really shows what the glaucous color is. It's a waxy substance which helps retain moisture inside the leaves and not put them out. They also hold their leaves up vertically, and which does not give them a face to the sun, so they don't burn as easily and they don't dehydrate desiccate, I guess, as easily as if they were held flat like most plants. Here's another one that I love to use. This is Regis Montana, or the King Mountain Manzanita, another local endangered species. This one, all the local ones and really statewide, the auriculate ones. This is an auriculate one, and so is this one, or no, so is this one here. An auriculate means ear-like, so the leaf wraps around the stem a little bit. There's no petiole really for the leaf. It just wraps right around the stem. And all across the state, the auriculate ones tend to be endangered or very rare. Or in fact, there's the pallida is found here in the hills, the Oakland Hills, and that's auriculate. And this is the King Mountain one that's found also around the area, also auriculate. And so all the endangered ones, it seems like, are auriculate. Although that's not true. There's some other ones too. But here's a very common one that's used in landscape a lot. This is the Howard Mcmahon. And Howard Mcmahon, generally, if you see the description of it, they usually say 3-4 feet, sometimes 5 feet. but I've actually seen them up to 15 feet tall. There's a school in Moraga where that was planted, had all Howard McMahon's planted around it back in the early 60s or mid 60s, I guess. And they're all like 10, 15 feet. So they can get quite large. The colors on this one I really love too. This is a Refugio Manzanita. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But Refugio, for us anyway, it's been the fastest one to propagate. It's from down south. It can get up to 15, 20 feet, so quite large. They have the new leaves are this color here. They seem to flower at the first, every time it gets any water at all, they start flowering. But you can also kill them easily by watering them. Most Manzanitas, or many Manzanitas, they're so easy to overwater. So really just water to get them established. And then after that, very light spray down to get the dust off the leaves is what I tell people is all they need. This one is a really good one. It's a very large one and it grows fairly fast for a Manzanita. This is the Mount St. Helena Manzanita. And it often, although not always, but it often has this wavy leaf pattern with fairly large leaves that are generally a little greener than they are in this picture. The picture, they just came out kind of gray. Arctostaphylos Manzanita, which is the straight species here of the Arctostaphylos Manzanita. This is a very large one that grows from Mount Diablo north. And on the right is which one is it? It's I'm not sure. I can't remember. So, but I love the new leaf color when they turn these peachy salmon colors too. I really like these. And then I go to berries. A lot of people are really focused on flowers a lot. The flowers, but the flowers are, they're very short-lived compared to these other features, which are the leaves, the berries, the bark. These things you live with all year long. You live with the flowers for a couple weeks, maybe if you're lucky, a month. There's only one Manzanita that I know of, in fact, that flowers for a month to 6 weeks. And that's the Big Sur Manzanita, which is a medium-sized Manzanita that gets to about 4 feet. So the berries vary a lot from one species to the next. And the berries, this is the Monterey Manzanita, which has been difficult for us to keep alive around here. So maybe if you with sandy soils, it would do better. But this is the berries on the Monterey. They have beautiful flowers too, the Monterey Ansis. And here's a Warren Roberts after the bronzy leaves have gone by. Once the new leaves have established, they get like this, and they get this bluish color. And the berries are often they're bicolored in the beginning, and then they turn all pretty much red after a while. This is a glauca again with the really nice russet berries on them, and they get a lot of berries on the glauca. And glaucas can get huge, so really big. There's a big difference though between the north. I've found anyway that the glaucas that are available, they're usually the southern glaucas from down south, and the leaves are smaller. They're not as glaucous gray colored. And this is the northern one, and that's the one that we carry. And it's really special, the northern one for me anyway. I'm not so crazy over the southern one for around here. There's another, this is the Warren Roberts. These are the new berries coming in. And then the bark, of course, the smooth red bark on this glauca here. This is an enormous trunk, by the way. It's huge. And this is a King Mountain, or I think this is a King Mountain Manzanita Regis, Montana at Tilden Botanical Garden. And you can see the bark. I don't have any photos of the shreddy bark. Manzanitas have either the smooth reddish bark, and it can be from red to all the way to this sort of dark purple color on some of them. But then there's other Manzanitas that have they don't get as thick trunks, they get thinner trunks, and they're more shreddy bark all the time rather than this reddish smooth bark. So this is one that this is a glauca that has been pruned just perfectly. Last week I talked a little bit about pruning, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now because I did leave out a piece that I should have mentioned, and that's that their bark can burn very easily. So be very careful to not prune on the southwestern exposures if they're going to get a lot of sun from that exposure. It's much better to prune and expose the trunks on the northern and eastern side. And as I mentioned last week, there's two ways to prune Manzanita. One way is to remove branches all the way back to the main trunks or the main stem. And so I try to do that all the time to show off the structure and really show off the bark well, to remove the lower branches. We call it limbing up in the business. So I love to limb them up, but then you can also control the size to a certain extent, the size and density of the leafy section by tip pruning the branches. But you have to be careful because on a mature Manzanita, the leaves are only in the very tips of the branches. Some of them, it's only in the very outer 4 to 6 inches, in fact. So you have to prune within that, in the top part of that even. When they're young, their branches are generally leafy throughout, but not when they're mature. So one other thing I wanted to mention about Manzanitas and having them in your landscape is once they're mature, drastic changes of any type can really hurt them and can kill them very quickly. So, and generally when a Manzanita begins to die, it usually finishes dying fairly quickly. They don't waste any time. And what else? Oh, the bark. The bark in the summertime, at some point in the summer, it turns really, really red, reddish brown. And then it gets redder and redder every day. And then all of a sudden it peels. It checkers like this and then peels, exposing this lime green bark underneath. That's when the bark is most sensitive to the sun. But it only lasts for a day or two when it's this lime green color with these cinnamon colored peelings on it. But it's really spectacular when it does this. It's really fun to see this. Changes like this throughout the garden, we call drama in the garden. And we like to create drama in the garden. So leaf color change, leaf drop, and stuff like that are all different ways that you can create drama in the garden. But this is a big old trunk, very red and gnarly. And I've seen them extremely gnarly. I think somewhere in here, there's some photos of a Manzanita that sometimes in the wild, especially, you can find them where they look almost entirely dead. All the branches have gone silvery gray or white, except for one ribbon of the brown or red color that winds its way all the way up, and it's still alive. They're able to survive when just that very fresh new bark is exposed and is still alive. As long as it reaches the leaves, it stays alive. So then flowers are, for us anyway, I think it's slightly less important than the other things, although the flowers can be beautiful. Here's the white cloud Manzanita. This is Arctostaphylos viridissima from down south, and it's filled with these white hairs. There's quite a few Manzanitas that have a lot of white hairs, but this one has a whole lot. And then the flowers on this particular one are really nice, big, dense clusters of white flowers on it. So I really like using that one too. This Manzanita has been a little bit difficult for us to grow, but the flowers on it are pretty spectacular. This is the Arctostaphylos pringlei drupaceae. It's a pink bract Manzanita, and see the pink bracts here. But it has a very deep pink color. This is a sentinel. Sentinel can vary from deep pink to white, and a lot of Manzanitas, in general, the Manzanita flowers go from white to pink. Okay, most of them have whitish flowers, and some of them have very, very pink flowers, and everything in between. But the other thing is that in some years, like all the sentinels will have much whiter than normal flowers, and other years they'll be very pink. And we don't know why. I've asked, a gazillion folks why they think that is, and nobody seems to have the answer to that. The some Manzanitas, like this is a Howard Mcmahon, they generally have smaller flower clusters that are spread throughout the whole thing, and they're tiny on Howard Mcmahon too. Howard Mcmahon has really great qualities, but the flowers aren't really one of the best, although sometimes some years they can be. Here's some very pink bracts on this. This is an Otay, or the Otay Mountain, or Otay Mountain down near San Diego. This is the Otay Mountain Manzanita, and it has these long pink bracts that last a lot longer than the actual flowers do. And here's this is an Austin Griffiths, and this is in a fairly white year. Some years they're very pink on those ones. Here's another showing the white ones. But the good feature about the Austin Griffiths for flowers anyway are the large clusters of flowers. In some years they're really spectacular. This year was a really good year for them. So this one actually is, I don't know, not sure. So there's a few things to point at, to think about. Maybe maybe when I redo the presentation all the way, we can publish the presentations that you can read through these things. One of the points that I make is that the real beauty of a Manzanita in the landscape is not, the first 5 years, generally you want to just let it grow, get its own form, get its own shape. Don't try to control it too much. But then after that, when you prune, the pruning is very important. And the pruning you do to expose the structure and the bark and the real beauty of it comes out very, very nicely that way. In the wild, that's done with, when branches fall on top of them, or, it breaks off the branches, or deer even can prune them. And even in age, they can lose a lot of branches too. I tell people not to remove dead branches that suddenly appear if a branch dies. If you can deal with it, just let it be, and rather than removing it. I find that removing dead branches tends to spread the branch dieback throughout the Manzanita, and which is a terrible thing to get it to spread. But a dead branch might look bad the first year with the dead leaves on it, but once the leaves have fallen and the bark falls off, it becomes very, very white and gnarly looking, and it's what they look like in the wild. It's not bad. This Manzanita has the most flowers of any that I know of. This is the Big Sur. This is the one that gets to about 4 feet. I talked quite a bit about it last week. But this one can get so many flowers you can't see the leaves on them at certain times. And the flowers range widely from pink to white too. And really nice bark too. How are we doing on time? Okay. Sorry, I wasn't keeping track of the time.
You're doing great. You've got about 5 more minutes left for questions. If you want to keep going for a minute or two, then Kathy will hop on and ask you a couple questions.
Okay. Auriculata, again, this is during a pink year, when the flowers are very pink on Mount Diablo. And here's another year when they're very white. I've seen them totally white. And here's the sort of pattern that the small leaves create on that one. And then here's Sentinel. Sentinel has more, doesn't have as thick branches as like Dr. Hurd and Austin Griffith, and some of the other large ones. The branches are more willowy, I'd say, and not quite as large either. This is the Howard Mcmahon, which also has very willowy branches. Howard Mcmahon from a distance. That's generally the structure, and this is before any type of pruning. But Howard Mcmahon actually lends itself to being a really nice green mound too. So here it is, planted in the estuary near me by the thousands. So here it is. And here's one up the road that we pruned up in order to show off the bark. And this is hanging over a sidewalk. We had to prune it anyway, but we were able to prune it in a way to really show off the bark. And these are about 30 years old, 35 years old. So here's Sentinel again. And then Moroensis, the flowers from pink to white also. But the leaves on the Morawensis can vary a lot, but they're generally very sort of a gray, whitish green. And that's in the summertime, they get very white, and then the new leaf buds come out kind of pink. They kind of look like little flowers even. So this is also a Morawensis on the right. So, and then the Pájaros, which I mentioned before. And the Sunset Manzanita is a medium size to about 5 or 6 feet. And it gets a bronzy small leaves as well. This is also sunset prune, beginning to prune them up here. And here's the sunset on the right. And here's the Dr. Hurd. Dr. Hurds are one of the largest ones in the garden. It's one that also, it doesn't want any summer water at all once it's established, but they can get easily 12 to 15 feet around, and they prune up really nicely. The leaves are very bright green. And in fact, at times of the year, it's in the summertime, when their new leaves are really flushed, they can look very, very yellow also, but a nice yellow. So, and here you can see, yes.
I could probably pause you if we could ask you just a couple of questions before we have to go on to the next speaker.
Sure.
We have like a minute or two. So let's see, do Manzanitas do well in clay soil?
Some of them do, most of them do just fine. There's a few that really want sandy soil, and you usually find them in the wild. The most of them are found in sandy soils, but most of the ones that I've covered here, I'd say all of the ones I've covered do very well in clay soil as well. So.
Okay. Is there anyone that you would recommend, as kind of your, some of your,
go-to?
Yeah.
I'd say the Austin Griffiths for a large Manzanita. The Austin Griffiths, it's very beautiful, and it's easy and fairly tolerant, and more tolerant than like Dr. Hurd of a little bit of summer water and things like that. So.
Okay. So, Pete, if you have it in you, I know you've had a tough morning and a tough weekend. You're welcome to stick around on Zoom and answer questions. I want to say that, as I mentioned earlier, Pete had an unfortunate loss of all of the checks and cash from his last 2 days of sales at East Bay Wild. So if you did shop on Friday or yesterday during the extravaganza at East Bay Wilds, if you would get hold of Pete or me, and perhaps you could write him out a second check for your sale and help him out of this bind. And I want to say, Pete, would you remind people again, when is the nursery open?
We're open every Friday from 9:30 to 4. And
okay.
We're fairly central in Oakland in the Fruitvale district. The address is on a website, but the entrance is on 28th Avenue. And you can always pull right in if there's room.
Okay, so I want to say that Pete is a beautiful garden designer. If you go to Find a Designer on the Native Plant website and go down to Pete Veilleux, you can see a portfolio of the gardens that he's designed. Pete runs East Bay Wilds Nursery, where he carries many species of native plants that are hard to find or not available elsewhere. He specializes in Manzanitas. It's a really fun place to go on Fridays, and Pete is a font of knowledge. He also does consultations and maintenance. So Pete, I want to thank you for joining us today and for giving another great talk on Manzanitas.
Thank you.